The courtroom was deathly silent. The judge's gavel struck sharply, breaking the tense air. Guilty. Michael Carter, a respected officer with 15 years of flawless service, sat handcuffed, staring at the floor. Despite repeatedly declaring his innocence, the jury had decided against him. The evidence, he was sure it had been planted. But what crushed him wasn't the sentence. It was Luke. The German shepherd, his loyal partner and best friend, sat at the back of the room, his eyes locked on Michael. Luke had been more than just a work companion. He had saved Michael's life countless times. The thought of never seeing Luke again was unbearable. When the judge stood, Michael made one last request. "Your Honor, please. May I say goodbye to Luke?" The room murmured in surprise. The judge hesitated, studying Michael, before finally nodding. 3 minutes. As soon as Luke was released, he bolted toward Michael, the sound of his paws echoing through the room. Michael dropped to his knees, wrapping Luke in a desperate embrace. "I'm sorry, buddy. I've failed you." But then, something changed. Luke frantically sniffed Michael's jacket. He tugged at the fabric, barking loudly. The entire room tensed. The judge furrowed his brow. What is he doing? Suddenly, with a soft metallic clink, something dropped to the floor. It was a recorder. The room held its breath. The prosecutor stepped forward nervously. "This doesn't prove anything." But Luke barked again, his gaze fixed on the device. "Activate the device," the judge ordered. When the button was pressed, static filled the room, followed by a clear voice. "Plant the evidence. Carter is the perfect scapegoat." The room erupted in shock. Michael immediately recognized the voice, his supervisor, Captain Ray Harding. The prosecutor tried to interrupt, but the judge slammed his gavel. "Sit down. This recording changes everything." Luke stood beside Michael, alert. For the first time in weeks, a spark of hope lit up the officer's eyes, and this was just the beginning. Do you believe Michael and Luke will expose the truth? To find out what happens next and follow the most thrilling moments of this story, subscribe now to the Fans Dwanimal channel and hit the notification bell. Don't miss the next episodes of this journey filled with tension, twists, and the unbreakable power of loyalty. It was then that the silence became unbearable. Everyone's breath was heavy as though the air itself was being sucked away, and the atmosphere in the room seemed to grow thicker, more suffocating. But the worst wasn't the sound, it was its absence. The complete and utter stillness that wrapped around them like a heavy cloak. Even in this profound quiet, there was a feeling, a presence. It wasn't just the eerie stillness. It was as if the very air had shifted, and something was waiting. Someone whispered, their voice barely audible but enough to send a shiver down the spine of everyone in the room. "Did you feel that?" No one answered. But every person present knew. They could feel it deep within their bones. It was impossible not to. The floor beneath them seemed to vibrate, but it wasn't the obvious tremor of an earthquake. It was subtle, delicate even, almost imperceptible, almost like something beneath them was moving, shifting, restless. Then it came, a sound, a snap, crisp and sharp, brief, but so deep it seemed to reverberate inside their chests. A crack in the stillness, and then another, and another, until the sharp sounds became a sequence rhythmic and unsettling. Footsteps. But they weren't coming from any direction outside the group. They weren't approaching nor retreating. No, these steps were among them. That's when someone screamed. It wasn't a scream of surprise, not even fear. It was a scream of pure desperation. A cry that rang with the raw instinct of survival. Because when they looked around, they realized something. Something had always been there, hidden within the group, watching them. And now, it was moving. It had been waiting for the right moment. Luke, Michael's loyal partner, began to growl low and deep. His muscles tensed and his hackles stood on end. This wasn't a growl of fear. It was the kind of growl that came from pure aggression, an animal instinct honed sharp through years of loyalty and service. His eyes, once calm, were now locked on the prosecutor. Luke was one step away from launching himself at the man, but something held him back, something invisible. His body was coiled tight, a spring ready to snap, but something restrained him. The tension in the air was thick. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting around the room, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then, in a moment of realization, he stiffened. Something was wrong. He could feel it too. That's when the judge stood, his voice cutting through the growing tension like a blade. "Everyone stay where you are. Do not move." But the command was useless. The room had already crossed the point of no return. Luke, with instincts finely tuned from years of danger, made a move that no one expected. With lightning speed, he lunged at the prosecutor, seizing his wrist with an unyielding grip that left no room for escape. The prosecutor's eyes widened, and he tried to scream, to break free. But the terror in his expression told a different story. He wasn't scared of the dog. He was scared of something else. "He knows," the prosecutor whispered, his voice barely audible, yet filled with panic. His eyes darted nervously. And then, the twist. The true revelation. The prosecutor wasn't who everyone thought he was. In a fluid motion, he pulled a small, sleek device from his pocket. A remote control. His fingers pressed the button and the floor beneath them began to shift. It wasn't a malfunction as some might have thought. No, this was planned. The floor cracked open, revealing a hidden trap. But that wasn't the only shock. From beneath the floor emerged more figures. Hooded, cloaked, their faces hidden in shadow. Soldiers? Agents? No one knew for sure. They were armed, each carrying weapons with intent. And their mission was clear: eliminate Michael, Luke, and anyone who knew too much. "You didn't think you'd escape, did you?" The prosecutor's voice oozed with malice, a grin spreading across his face. The expression was illuminated by a beam of light slicing through the room, casting long, sinister shadows. But then, Michael heard something. It was faint at first, but undeniable. A voice, familiar, yet filled with tension. Michael. It was the voice of someone he never expected to hear again. His partner, Captain Ray Harding. But what was he doing there? The captain stepped into the room, gun drawn, his presence commanding. And once again, the room fell silent. The captain wasn't there to arrest Michael. He was there to save him. "We don't have much time," Harding said, his voice urgent, before activating a device on his wrist. And that's when the floor trembled with an intensity far greater than before. The room began to shake, violently, as if the very foundation beneath them was coming undone. But this time, there were no more traps to be sprung, no more tricks. The entire courtroom was collapsing. Luke's growls had turned into full, vicious barks, his protective instincts reaching their peak. Michael, with the captain at his side, knew they had no time to lose. They rushed toward the only visible exit. But as they ran, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that something far more sinister was unfolding beneath the surface. What was hidden below them? What had they uncovered? Before they could leave, Michael hesitated and looked back at Luke. The discovery they had just made. It was just the beginning. The truth they had uncovered was only the tip of the iceberg. The battle was far from over. And in the next instant, as the walls seemed to close in, they knew that what was coming would be far more dangerous than anything they had faced so far. They thought they controlled everything, Michael thought, his mind racing. But they didn't know they were only playing the beginning of the game.